We'll call the meeting to order. May we have roll call, please?
Yes, present tonight we have Ms. Kathy Moore, Mr. Davro Lopez, Mr. Tommy Minton, Mr. David Pollack, Mr. William Sheridan, and absent tonight we have Mr. Lawrence Wright and Mr. Matt Young.
Thank you.
Welcome.
If everyone would check your cell phones, make sure they're turned off, please. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the July 8, 2017 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Lopez, Mr. Minton, is the second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is public comment. This is the time for anyone wishing to speak to the board about any item other than the public hearing item tonight. I have one written request. Anyone wishing to speak to the board will ask you to come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and your comments are limited to 3 minutes. The first written request I have is Dean Tasman.
Good evening. Dean Tasman, 5900 Dean Road, Orlando, Florida, 32817. Excuse me. I would just like to thank the board for last week, all your hard work, going over the situation with it all comes down to the medical marijuana. No one wants to call it what it is. You put in over 2 hours of work coming up with a compromise, which I felt was good for us, but it's good for the city because what you approved was having pharmacies at a major intersection, the intersection of Mitchell Hammock and 434. But last night at the city council meeting, not only did they not add your amendment or ideas of what you would like the regulation to be, they didn't even acknowledge that you guys existed. They didn't bring it up in the agenda itself. There was a line in there that said, if you would like us to add this, the staff to add this, they need to direct them to do it. They did not acknowledge at any point that even existed. It's pretty sad. You guys put a lot of work in. To me, Kathy, I'm sorry to say this, it's like you guys are impotent when it comes to giving ideas. They don't listen to anything. They do whatever they want. I just don't understand the purpose of the board. They said they might bring it up again. They're not bringing it up again. They just want to sweep it under the rug, and it's just not fair. Thank you very much. And you did a great job last week. Thank you.
That's the only written request I have. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the board at this time? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Next item is the public meeting item, resolution number 3460-17, the non-statutory development agreement and associated master land use plan for the Flagler Center. Do we have the applicant present? You state your name and address for the record and tell us about your project.
My name is Hank Porche. My business address, 1697 Pratt Place, Oviedo, Florida. The project complies with all of the land use plans of the city of Oviedo, complies with all the zoning requirements. It is a commercial development currently zoned C2, and the master land use plan contemplates 3 commercial lots, a little over right around 2.5 acres of wetlands mitigation, and that's pretty much the site.
Okay. I'll just suggest this. If you want us to vote to approve your project, you need to give us a little bit more than that, okay?
Okay. I thought you had the packet.
Madam Chair, I can go ahead and expand on that if you so desire.
Okay.
Yes. The
Thank
parcel, this parcel itself is, as you said, a non-statutory development agreement with associated master land use plan for Flagler Center. There's also an architectural development order with that, 480-17. This is a site that's, to make a correction, it's 10.97 acres in size, and the address is 789 West Mitchell Hammock Road. Per the Land Development Code, you'll be making a recommendation on this non-statutory development agreement. This is a written recommendation to the City Council, and you can approve with revisions, or deny the proposed non-statutory development agreement. The land use on the property is commercial, according to the 2025 future land use map. This is a C2 zoned property, according to the official zoning map. As I said, non-statutory development agreement, master land use plan, and ADO have been attached, which provides exhibits showing what the architecture will look like of the site and the actual development standards under whereby they will follow. Project consists of a 2-story fitness center, several 1-story restaurants with drive-through, a proposed daycare or rental associated with the parking field, depending on what they would get in there according to their development agreement. The intensities are already set within that. The non-statutory development agreement, as stated, will match the master land use plan. And real quick, I'll go ahead and go through some of the requirements in that development agreement. They are allowed uses that are permissible under the C2, building setbacks per the Land Development Code, 30, 10, and 20. That's front, side, and rear. To provide some correction to the LPA, the signage standards is provided in accordance with LDC, except as follows: 4 freestanding monument signs, 1 per code, no more than 48 square feet. I've discussed with the applicant that should actually be 3 freestanding signs, which is 1 per lot, which is in accordance with our land development code. And also on your site development plan, that's one of the exhibits, there will be a sign. There's 1 sign on the limited access way, the right in and right out. There will be a sign on the other side of the present sign. And the reason for that would be because of the considerable distance between the right-of-way pavement edge and the distance to the entry of the property where those signs are at. Hence, they would need the sign at that location. They are all on separate lots that meets our LDC standards, so that's a point of clarification. Landscaping and buffers will be in accordance with the LDC. Driveway distance requirements, they'll be on the same side of the road. Spacing between driveways is 367 square feet per code. All the access will be per code standards. The parking is subjected to a higher standard in the development agreement than the LDC requires. LDC is 160. The NSDA is 188. They're providing 192, so 188 will be the standard they will go by for this development, so they're above that standard. To provide a point of clarification as well, there's 2 loading zones, which meets our code standards, and also the lighting standards got merged into your loading zone standards when the report was written, but the lighting standards are within the heights of the LDC, which are 35 feet. They're asking for 25 feet. Other lighting standards will be determined at the time of construction plan, assuming that the council were to approve this item at a later date. Per the comp plan mobility strategic requirements, they will provide certain items because it's on a development corridor per the comprehensive plan. 2 of the things that they are providing is a wider sidewalk, the 10-foot sidewalk along Mitchell Hammock. There are extra bike racks above our code standards. I think it's double the number. And they can provide other things like electronic car charging stations, additional shade coverings, and carpool. We'll determine that at a later date and make sure they provide those items. As stated earlier, this has an architectural development order with it. This is one of our items that were approved before the new architectural standards went in. They received their site development order before the new architectural standards went in, so they're under the old LDC Article 4, Section 4.18 standards for that project. And that has all been included with your packet, so that information is included with your packet and will be approvable tonight. There's an ADO order already written up, and that's provided basically for your review, and also it provides us a way of documentation to show that that's been approved, even though it's under the old standards. The city attorney has reviewed the subject NSDA with the associated MLUP and ADO. They recommend approval on that. And with that, it is recommended that the LPA recommend approval of resolution number 3460-17 with the caveat or condition that that the development agreement be changed to 3 signs and that the additional sign be shown on the site plan. The applicant has already provided all that information to me, and I've changed that already in potential anticipation of the LPA making that approval with condition. I'm here with any questions you may have. Our Transportation Concurrency Management, our third party that does that review, is here as well in case there was any questions about Mitchell Hammock, and the applicant and his representatives are here as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there questions of staff? This is not a public hearing item, so what's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair.
Mr.
Make a
Lopez?
motion to accept ordinance resolution, let me get to the number, hold on. Resolution number 3460-17 as provided by staff.
With the changes recommended by staff?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Pollack? Is there any discussion? You can have a seat. Is there any discussion? I have a couple of questions. In our staff report, it says that the project consists of 2 one-story restaurants, but then in the agreement itself, it says there's 3.
Correct. That's a correction that will be made on the staff report, which is why I said several.
Okay? So the agreement is correct in this case. There are
Yes.
3.
Yes, ma'am.
And in the agreement regarding parking, section 16, it says the minimum is 9 by 18. Those are the compact size parking spaces. Do we not have a number as far as the number of full size that's required? Because the way this reads, it makes it sound like all of them can be the compact size.
That information, the 9 by 18, correct, that would be the compact size spaces. I would go ahead and, in regards to that,
Per the LDC, that's the size of the compact.
correct. Actually, it would be 10 by 20 would be the size, would be the average size stalls.
So then should this paragraph parking, should that be changed to the 10 by 20? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so that's another change then.
I would ask that the LPA make that a condition of the approval.
Okay.
Oh, you have 20 compacts, but let's see.
You may want to have the applicant address that.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
So you may want to ask the applicant for clarification since he's present, if he should.
Do you have someone here
He
that
should
can
have the
address that?
opportunity to address the board if he wishes.
State your name again for the
Hank
record.
Porche. We have approximately 20 compact spaces.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Lopez.
Considering there's so many changes that are flying around from staff on this resolution, I know there's a motion to approve. I'm going to withdraw my motion if you'll accept my motion, and that we table this until we get all this right on paper the first time. So I'm withdrawing that.
I think once the motion's been seconded, we have to vote on it. I agree that there seems to be some discrepancies between the staff report and the proposed agreement, and it does make it difficult to follow through on some of these. So we have before us the motion to approve with the conditions that staff recommended. But now you're talking about waiting until we can get this back before us with all the corrections made.
You have as part of, just, sorry to interrupt, as part of your resolution, it does provide that you would be providing for scrivener's errors to be corrected, so those are already provided for to be done.
Jennifer, I'm sorry, but I'm having a real
still
hard
not
time
hearing me?
you.
No, is that better?
That's better.
Okay. As part of your resolution, it does provide for a correction of scrivener's errors.
The
So you
plans,
can add them in as scrivener's errors, or you can add them as conditions. That's up to the board's pleasure.
I agree with you. However, there's a constantly changing the vocabulary. This is missing, that's missing. I'd rather just have it clean up front. Now, I'm aware that we can make the changes, but we're not talking one or two, we're not talking a couple.
Okay, the motion, if there's no other discussion, the
I think
motion...
the applicant is,
I'm sorry?
I
Can I
believe
speak?
the applicant is requesting to speak.
our plans and our development agreement show the correct information, and to table it for a week or 2 weeks penalizes us, despite the fact that we're correct.
Thank you. Okay, the motion before us then is to approve, and we've had discussion to table this. So we have to vote on the motion before us before we can do anything else. If there's no other discussion, we'll call the vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Nay. Motion fails. So now what's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair, could we have a little bit additional...
Pollack?
Could we have additional discussion on this matter before we
There
move on?
needs to be a motion before us
Okay.
to discuss it.
I would like to amend the motion, or make a new motion for the adoption of 3460-17 with the additional conditions discussed after the first motion was addressed, considering that we can actually articulate exactly what conditions we're going to be voting on.
Well, okay. Is there a second? Seeing none, your motion...
I'm going to second, just so we can have discussion, so I can understand what
Okay, Mr. Minton.
my colleague is getting to.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, discussion?
If I may.
Mr. Pollack?
I agree with the applicant that if their report was correct and it just didn't get to our desk in the way that includes all of the necessary changes, I don't think it's in the interest to delay this if we can articulate clearly which things need to be changed. From what I understand from this quick discussion that we had, we need to clarify the size of the parking spaces. We need to clarify the signs from being 1 to 3. And I guess we need to clarify that of those parking spaces, 20 will be compact. If those are the only changes that are necessary, I don't think it's I don't think we should waste everybody's time and then hold another meeting a couple of weeks from now and delay all the processes and money that's at risk here. If it's just those 3 conditions, I think we can articulate that as being left out or needing to be clarified and approve the motion as the staff requests.
Okay, is there any other discussion?
Madam Chair, so
Mr.
that was
Minton.
my, to that point, I mean, that's the changes we've discussed so far. I just want to get clear what changes we've discussed so far. So it's number of signs from 4 to 3.
And that will meet the LDC standards. That was something that was caught before it got to you in regards to that item there.
And we're trying to get clarity on the number of parking spaces. So, as I understand from what the applicant has said, we still have 188. I'm looking at page 5 and 6 of the agreement. So we're looking at 188 spaces, of which 9 are handicapped and 20 would be compact. So the remaining 150, 160 spaces are 10 by 20.
Max, I think the code maximum is 20% in regards to compact spaces.
May I clarify something? So I think the development agreement was written in a way that seems a little bit ambiguous, but if we follow the development agreement, it says, the development shall provide parking in accordance with Article 13 of the LDC. Article 13 of the LDC provides that the regular parking space is 10 by 20, and the minimum is 9 by 18, and the maximum that they can provide is 20%. They are not requesting anything more. So they are actually, the next sentence says, each parking space shall contain a minimum rectangular area of 9 by 18. Well, that's the minimum that they can provide with the compact. But the previous sentence already says that it has to go in accordance with the LDC. So it can only be 20% provided at compact spaces, and they are following the LDC. But the language seems that you can read that all the parking spaces could be 9 by 18, but it's only the 20%.
Well, if line A then of paragraph 16 controls it all, then why do we need B in here?
Yeah, so that's the language of the development agreement was kind of...
So, Teresa, if I may, the staff report is where the errors are contained. There's no errors in the resolution, and there's no errors in the development agreement.
There are
There are no errors in the development agreement. They're just, maybe additional information that could be...
Because we're not approving staff report, right? We're approving the resolution and the development agreement and the attachments.
right, and there's some errors in the agreement that we were given.
In the agreement, the sign is mentioned 4. On page 3 of the agreement, it does say the 4 freestanding signs.
Okay,
if
so
you're
then
looking at
the 1.
three,
So
that
then
is
the,
a
okay,
change.
right, where she pointed out that page, right. Okay, so just that one.
So, well, let's go back to the parking spaces for a second. In the staff memo, it said 192 because it was above the minimum required, but then in the agreement, it does say 188. So is it 188?
They provide 192 in the site plan, but the development agreement says 188, so we're going to go by what the development agreement says, which is 188, because they're subjecting themselves to a higher minimum standard.
Okay. But we don't, it's just not explicitly written in the agreement. Does that answer your concern about the parking spaces? What staff has indicated?
If we still need to remove paragraph, or 16B then.
Okay, so that's your suggestion.
Because if
We can remove it,
A
yes.
controls everything about parking, then B doesn't need to be there.
The important thing is they're exceeding their standards.
There were no other suggested changes at this point? That's the 2 we're focusing on? Just so I have any of what I would be voting on here?
I can't hear, I'm sorry. Now I'm the one who can't hear. I said, now I'm the one who can't hear what you just said.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to make sure that's the only changes we're discussing so that I'm clear on what we're possibly voting on here. Okay.
So does anyone have anything other than those 2 changes to the agreement itself?
Do we have to build more buildings?
The number of buildings? I'm sorry, can you speak up for the microphone?
Wasn't there discussion about the number of buildings in here as well?
It was just a discrepancy between the staff report saying there's 2 restaurants and the agreement saying there's 3. And I understand from staff that the agreement was correct in that regard, that it is 3. Are there any other proposed changes or corrections?
No.
Okay, so the 2 that we've discussed then is in the non-statutory development agreement, that the number of signs allowed would be reduced from 4 to 3, and that's in paragraph 11A, and in paragraph 16, the subparagraph B would be deleted. Is there any other discussion? Okay, so the motion before us then is to recommend approval of the agreement with those two changes.
Correct.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
2 nays. And 3 yeses. Okay, so motion passes. This item will be considered by City Council. I'm sorry, I don't see a date. When this is before the City Council?
This would be September 7th.
Okay, so the City Council will consider this item September 7th at 6:30 in these chambers. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing on Resolution Number 3459-17, special exception use order for Lockwood Storage. Do we have the applicant here? Hi.
Hi, good evening. I'll just wait for that to get pulled
State your
up.
name and address, please.
Sure. Tara Tedrow, Lounge Drosdick, 215 North Eola Drive, Orlando, Florida. Just make sure this is going to work. You and I went through this song and dance in the beginning. Let's see if we can get it to move. Yeah, well, this is not a good start, guys, but hopefully once there we go. All right. So like I said, Tara Tedrow here on behalf of the applicant, Johnson Development. The aerial before you shows the overall location of our site. We are located at 1010 Lockwood Boulevard. That's east of Swanson, north of Mitchell Hammock Road, and west of Lockwood Boulevard. You're getting it for me? Okay, great. This first view shows you an entrance off Lockwood Boulevard. Just want to reorient you all to the project. We brought this before you some time back, but just so you get a visual view of where we're talking about, this is the view of our site, and you can see the Double Down Gymnastics to the right. This is another view of Double Down Gymnastics, a commercial neighbor that we have north of our parcel. This is also a view of our adjacent neighbor, the Shell gas station. It's a side view of their station, also north of our parcel. We have a letter of support we submitted at the original LPA hearing for you from this property owner supporting our project. This is a view of an adjacent retail neighbor. There is a commercial retail strip to the south of us. We also have a letter of support from 1016 Lockwood Boulevard that was submitted of record at our original LPA hearing as well. Finally, here is another view of our adjacent neighbors, a drive-through bank building to the south of our property, and a view towards Swanson Drive. And if you're looking towards Swanson Drive, behind the mature tree line and that masonry wall are the Oviedo Groves apartments. And so you can see that from where our site is oriented, and the site design later on the site plan will make this a little clearer, but we have a 20-foot at least setback from our property line to Swanson Drive. Swanson Drive is a 50-foot right-of-way. You then have the wall, the mature tree line on both sides of that wall, and then before you even get to the stairwell of any of the apartments, there is an additional 80 feet of double-loaded parking and a drive aisle for Oviedo Groves itself. This is a view looking from Oviedo Groves. If you were to look toward our site, again, it's difficult to see where our site is because of the mature tree line and the existing masonry wall. This is a view down Swanson Drive showing you that existing 50-foot right-of-way and our property. The grass on the left side of that photo represents the subject site. Background, this is a 1.59-acre vacant property located off Lockwood and Swanson. On June 13th, we had a recommended approval of 3 ordinances to rezone, to transmit to DEO for a comp plan amendment, and we will be bringing back on September 7th before the Commission all 4 of these items, so our special exception as well as our amendments to the comp plan and our rezoning for the overall package, and eventually we will be bringing our architectural design order for approval by staff before that is transmitted to the City Council for their approval as well. Tonight we're requesting approval of a special exception use order for personal storage, and our property is zoned C2, so under your land development code, or will be zoned C2 rather. So under your land development code, one of the conditions is that personal or mini self-storage requires a special exception. And in order to get that recommendation of approval, your staff had to review those code criteria to ensure our compliance. They found that we met all of the criteria set forth in your code, so tonight we are requesting that you approve consistent with their recommendation and the conditions that they've set forth in their report that I can go into a bit more detail on. So the conditions that are set forth in your code, and that is section 3.3 sub D sub 2, are as follows. The first is land use compatibility, and this is outlined in the staff report you received, but our use and design have been deemed compatible and consistent with the adjacent existing commercial land uses and has minimal to no off-site impacts to the adjacent uses. For the second criteria about sufficient site size, adequate specifications, and infrastructure to accommodate the special exception we are requesting, we have designed our site with a lot of feedback from staff, and you can see that there are multiple conditions set forth in the staff report specific to our site design in order to ensure things like greater pedestrian and vehicular connectivity and to have enhancements for the overall aesthetic appeal of our site design. So we have landscape buffers, open space, pedestrian and bicycle circulation, all to staff specifications in their requests. We've relocated sidewalks to accommodate staff's requests. We've widened them above what code is requiring. We are planting additional landscaping above the enhancements we've already agreed to and above the architectural design enhancements we've already agreed to. Specifically, as outlined in your staff report, that is one palm tree for every 50 feet on the south and the west buffers of the property. So we have really enhanced the landscaping above and beyond all of your code minimums. In terms of proper use of mitigative techniques, those 4 additional criteria in terms of circulation patterns, sidewalks, widening of sidewalks and their location, as well as those existing palm trees, are also all going toward those mitigative techniques that staff has deemed to allow for an approval tonight. Our site does not include or generate any hazardous waste. That's a condition that we have on our own plan. We comply with applicable laws and ordinances, and we are not located within a residential district. And of course, we're happy to provide any additional information that you may need specific to our site. The next slide shows you the site plan. Keep in mind this plan was prior to when staff had requested some additional conditions, so we will have wider sidewalks than what you've seen. We're relocating some of those sidewalks to make sure that it is going to be compliant with staff's request. So tonight you're not approving the site plan, just whether or not this special exception is approvable, and because we've met the criteria and we agree with the conditions that your staff has imposed, I believe that we've satisfied those concerns. But one thing you should note on these site plans, there's only 7 parking spots, and we'll talk about that in a minute, because one of the issues in your consideration for a special exception use order does have to do with traffic and internal circulation patterns, and we only have 7 parking spots because of the very minimal traffic that is generated from a self-storage use. The next 2 slides show revised renderings. Now, these renderings don't have all of the enhanced palm trees and landscaping, so we sent new renderings to staff for their consideration this morning, so this has been a dynamic process. We're getting feedback from them about every element of our plans and tweaking them to hopefully meet staff specifications and get their approval before we bring it finally before the City Council for their review as well. And that next rendering, again, shows you some of the design elements in relation to the other existing uses around us. As I noted, there was a traffic study performed earlier this year, and it reviewed trip generation for a larger square footage than what we're proposing, but we compared it between what commercial retail would allow and then versus what self-storage would allow. And your staff reviewed and approved that study as well. And if you look at the next slide, it'll show you that the proposed self-storage development generates significantly lower traffic than any other maximum allowable commercial land use would. And this is ideal considering there are some issues on East Mitchell, Hammock, and Lockwood with traffic. But if you look specifically at the next slide, we generate 93% less traffic than any other commercial use, hence the need only for 7 parking spaces, and that is 4,346 fewer daily trips overall. We only have 27 p.m. peak hour trips, so a very, very low traffic generator. So in terms of capturing internal circulation patterns, in terms of providing safe circulation for any pedestrians as well as for vehicles, our site design and those conditions of approval in your staff report will all go toward making sure that this is the best design, the safest design for our customers as well as anybody else who is driving along the roads around our property. And so tonight, we are recommending and asking that you recommend approval of a special exception use order. That's resolution number 3459-17. And we have our whole project team here. If you have any specific questions, we would be happy to answer them. If there's anybody from the public that had questions or concerns, I'd ask for the opportunity to respond.
Thank you. May we hear from staff?
Yes. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. Anach Whitfield with the Planning Division. This is a special exception use order, and the request before the board is to consider and make a recommendation of approval to the City Council for resolution number 3459-17 for the special exception use order for the Lockwood mini storage. As Tara mentioned, the location is on the east side of Swanson Drive, approximately 92 feet west of Lockwood Boulevard. This special exception order is associated with ordinances 1648, which speaks to the large-scale text amendment to create the new high-intensity commercial land use category. Ordinance 1649, which is the small-scale map amendment to convert their 1.59-acre parcel to the high-intensity commercial land use category. It's currently commercial, so we're going to high-intensity commercial. And Ordinance 1650, which speaks to the zoning change to take it from C1 to C2. As Tara mentioned, this board considered these prior three ordinances at your June 13th meeting where you had recommended approval. And since that time, it's gone to City Council for its first public hearing, and at that time it was transmitted. The large scale was transmitted to the state agencies for review. We received no objections or concerns from any of the state agencies that responded within the time frame set by statutes. So this ordinance, and those ordinances are going to City Council on September 7th. This special exception is required because the C2 does not allow a mini storage, a personal storage mini warehouse, except through a special exception. And as Tara mentioned, the staff report details all of the criteria that we analyzed to make sure that what they are proposing is consistent with our codes. I want to point out on page 4 of the staff report that it says September 18th for a public hearing to council. At the time, that's what we were shooting for, but we were able to complete the staff memo for the City Council and get it advertised within the date for the September 7th meeting. So I want to amend that section of my memo to reflect the September 7th City Council meeting. The City Attorney's Office has reviewed Resolution 3459-17 and found no legal objections, and staff is recommending that the board approve Resolution number 3459-17.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Okay, this is a public hearing item. We'll open it up. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. What's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Sheridan?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of resolution number 3459-17.
Okay, is there a second? Mr. Lopez? Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Sheridan?
just real quick, I'd like to thank the applicant for being so well prepared and giving another excellent presentation and giving us all the information needed. It makes it a lot easier for us, so thank you.
I second that. Is there any discussion or any questions?
I just have one quick question.
Mr. Lopez?
It's probably not in order, but did you all get a chance to talk to the HOA out there?
Oh, did we ever?
Okay.
Yes.
All I wanted to know.
And we have no opposition from them now. So yes, so we are good to go and complying above and beyond, paying additional assessments above what everyone else in the association is required to pay under the declaration. So I think they are satisfied.
Good.
Thank you.
Is there any other? Mr. Pollack?
The location of the CubeSmart, and this is regarding the mitigation portion of the special exception, the height of the proposed structure, is that the same height as the Double Downs facility, or is it taller, shorter?
It's slightly taller. So you can see in the orientation, it is above the roof line of the double-down gymnasium, but will be compliant with the comp plan and zoning designations when brought back before us as a total package on September 7th.
How much higher is it? We're talking like a story?
No, not that tall.
I'm sorry, if you're going to speak, you need to come to the microphone so that it's on the record. State your name, please.
I'm Brian Potts, engineer for the project. We don't know exactly how tall they are. We're about 42 feet.
Okay. So, in your estimation?
I think it's really close. We're probably 4 or 5 feet taller than that.
Oh, okay. And then, is the facility going to have, being a storage facility, I'm assuming has outdoor storage units, or just only internal?
No, it's internal storage.
And are there lights that are on the building all night?
Inside of the building?
Outside?
Hey, I'm Charlie Stocks. I'm with Johnson Development, the owner. So we'll have wall packs on the building for just exterior illumination, but, we'll go through the process of getting the photometric plan approved. There won't be any light creep off of our site. We'll have it, dimly lit at night for security reasons, but that's it. So we're not proposing any pole lighting, so there won't be any, bright lights shining off of our site.
Okay. So
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Pollack, the only thing before us tonight is a special exception.
I understand, but one of the elements of a special exception, it goes to the mitigation and how it affects the surrounding properties, and this was in respect to that.
Okay.
So the lights that are coming off of the building at night, they wouldn't, like as you mentioned, they won't intrude. You won't be able to see them from the residential areas surrounding, I'm assuming?
That's correct.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we have the motion before us to recommend approval of resolution number 3459-17. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members.
This item will be considered by the City Council on September 7th at 6:30 in these chambers. Good luck. Okay, the next item on the agenda are discussion items. We don't have anything listed. Does anyone have any discussion items for the board? City Attorney?
Just briefly, and you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just a brief reminder, and I'll send a memo through staff, and they'll route it to all of you. Just a little reminder, not with respect to any of you or your city, but it was a good reminder from another city that I represent with respect to some potential issues of talking outside of board meetings. And it's best if we limit those, and if we do have those, to have disclosure of ex parte communications or site visits regarding items that will come before you, and your obligations to abstain from voting if you have a financial conflict or a bias or prejudice that would affect your decision in the matter. As well, I may send out a little reminder on preferred procedures in conducting quasi-judicial hearings on matters, and procedurally with respect to staff presentation, applicant presentation, just little reminders on that and my recommendations.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Okay, our future meeting dates are September 12th and September 26th. Do we know if we have anything for September 12th?
Not at this time.
Okay. And of course, if you can't be present, be sure to let Dahlia know as soon as possible, so we make sure we have a quorum. If there's nothing further, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We stand adjourned.